Hello, welcome to the Gameroom. I am here with my Nintendo 64 game collection today. Some of them are here, some of them are not. I'll bring the other ones into view later on. I really enjoy watching these type of collection videos and seeing what people have and why they have them. So I've got a bunch of other ones of these on my channel if you want to check those out as well. But I'm not showing the hardware today, apart from a couple of things. I bought two of these I bought one of these Retro Fighters controllers when they first came out. I was a backer of the Kickstarter. I was happy when I finally got mine. I don't mind them. Like, I love the way that it's presented. I like that it's a nice light controller. It is really well spread out. One thing that I did not like about this, though, when I was playing it, it was almost the first or second time I was playing it, had it put into the controller. When I pulled it out, the whole casing of this little connection came undone. So I wasn't really impressed with that. But overall, good controller, and they were cheap. Okay, here is my Retro Tink 2X or 2x Mini. So it is a line doubler. I'd play my games on LCD screens. I don't like the weight of a massive CRT, and they take up a lot of space. So LCD is where it's at for me. I got one of these Retro Tinks 2X Mini. This was before the 5X came out, although I would not pay for the 5X. This is all I wanted. So something to clean it up a little bit for that retro to HDMI connection. And this one does a fairly good job. Now we are on to the boxed games. So let's have a look through those. Let's start with this one here. So GoldenEye 007. It is a bit of a tougher one to sell these days on the Nintendo 64, especially considering there's a great version on the new Xboxes and things now. So this version's become a little bit, I guess it's not needed as much anymore because of that upgrade, which is the way it should be. You should be able to upgrade these things over time. I do not. So I've got the manual in there. I've got the game. A mate of mine actually gave me a bunch of his Nintendo 64 things. Brad, if you're listening, thank you very much. He liked his games back in the day so much that that he gave the covers a laminate. So he did what they do with library books and stuff, and gave it a bit of a plastic stickered cover over all of his games as well, which I think is just really cool. I like. Of course, it totally devalues them and means that these are worthless these days, the cases. But I think that that's something that I like. It's something that really tickles me, was that, you know, you get these things that people loved so much that they would go to different lengths to try and protect their games and things like that. So that only adds to it all for me. I reckon that's really cool. So you'll find a few of these. I'll point them out, or which ones have kind of been laminated, I guess, over the top with the protective cover. I still think that it's worth a pickup on the Nintendo 64, but if you do have the option between this one and the Xbox One, which unfortunately is just a digital, you can't get it physical, but then the Xbox One is better, but you know, that can be taken away at any time, these digital games, unfortunately. 1080 Snowboarding is the next one I have to show. It is also in one of these laminated boxes from my mate. 1080 is one of those games that was big at the time because of the graphics, as in the big jump from your 2D to your 3D. Because it was such a big jump and such a big deal, games like 1080 and games like Wave Race really hit people in a certain way, where you could have this sports game that was very cool because the graphics were so cool. It is a good game, don't get me wrong. I do not think it would have been as big a deal had we had 3D graphics on consoles prior to that. Mario Kart 64, one of the best, if not the best, game on the Nintendo 64. It is great in single player. It is great in multiplayer. It is far better than Diddy Kong Racing, in my opinion. I had Diddy Kong Racing. I don't like it as much as this one. This is just where it's at, and especially because it has Wario, which is my favorite kind of Nintendo character, I reckon. He's so good, but I don't enjoy his games very much, sadly. I just kind of enjoy the character. He's such a mean person. There's the cartridge, which is different art than the front of the box. I only have the box there, laminated, and it is so much fun. Lots of fun in the racing, lots of fun in the popping the balloons in the battle. It is terrific. Still a great one to own these days. Here's one that I thought I would one day get around to and never have. It is in a laminated box here. It is Banjo-Kazooie. Banjo-Kazooie was cool to watch. My mates who had the Nintendo 64 play back in the day, but it was not one that kind of grabbed me in a way that I would want to play all the way through it. Especially considering how many hours my mates used to say they had spent on it. That was a big put off for me, believe it or not. Just knowing, it's kind of daunting, really. So yeah, I hear really good things about it. I actually planned on playing it in the Rare Replay on the newer Xbox machines, but haven't got around to it. If I did play it, I would probably play it for a little while, and I would imagine that I would give up after a bit of time just because of how many hours people say that they have to spend on it. Right, I'll get through these laminated boxes first, and then we'll go into the other things. So Yoshi's Story. This one actually looked really cool. I really like the look of this one. I have not, unfortunately, played through this one either, but it certainly was one that grabbed my attention. This looked cool, and then I did not like where they went with Yoshi after this. I reckon they shouldn't have made each one kind of like the woolly world and blah blah blah. I didn't enjoy that. I think they should have just kept it like another Mario title and just had Yoshi's in it instead. Would have been better, but anyway, it is what it is. I still think that one looks cool. Okay, the last of the laminated boxes, Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey. Now here is one that, unlike the 1080, I don't think this was to do with just the graphics. It was actually it was a blast to play multiplayer, this one, because it was sports based as well. You had that kind of that grounded in reality gameplay, and this was one of the first times you're like, wow, we got sport in 3D that almost looks like, or to to everybody playing at the time, it looks like the real thing. Of course it didn't, but we all thought that it wasn't going to get any better than this. And it had the fights in it as well. You always got to have that fight mode on. Interesting that it had a G rating, even though it had the boxing on, where they would try and knock each other's helmets off and things like that. And yeah, it was a blast. I'm not sure what it'd be like going back to it now, but yeah, it was great fun. Right, talking about fighting, here is WWF Attitude. This one I have in the box. The box is looking good, actually. It was a great, fun fighting game that you could play with the 4 players, and then I really liked how you could change the different modes to suit how you wanted to play and how you wanted to set things up for you and the people that you had over. If you wanted to just play one person onto the computer, or if you wanted to play 2 people who were versing computer players, or if you wanted to have an all-in with 4 people, or if you wanted to have teams, it kind of catered for all of that, which was really good. This was when I was getting out of watching anything to do with wrestling. Wrestling in Australia was not like wrestling in America. If you wanted to watch wrestling before this, you had to rent it from the video shop. It wasn't on normal TV. And then at this stage, I think they started to put more and more of this onto normal TV, but it just wasn't too into it at that stage. Still had some of the great wrestlers that were around from the heyday, but not because I was watching it on TV that I found it so good. It just was, and I guess still is, such a great game to be able to play how you want to play. Mortal Kombat 4. Here's one that I got, actually, I got this one at a garage sale. So I asked if they had any games, and they had the Star Wars pack, which I sold off straight away, because if you have a look at the Star Wars console pack, it's got the black Episode 1 racer on the front, but you can hardly see it. It was really a waste of a special edition, so I sold that off pretty quick. But this was in there. Mortal Kombat 4. I loved Mortal Kombat 4 when it came out. I really loved it. I had all three on the Super Nintendo as a kid, and then to find it in 3D was the correct step, I thought, because it went from the number 1 and number 2 that were quite similar, I thought, except that number 2 kind of refined things and made things better. And then number 3 was a different beast. It was quite cartoony, and it was quite fast, and it was quite silly. And then number 4 brought it back to being more serious, and it was in 3D, and it just looked amazing, because it was, as I said, that stuff that you just hadn't seen before on consoles. So to bring it over to the Nintendo 64 was Nintendo saying, we're in it for the adult games as well. Yeah, Mortal Kombat 4 is a win in my books. I know that it doesn't get much love these days because of the way that it's set up in 3D, but I really enjoy it. Okay, I have these all flipped over, so to make them a bit of fun to go through, a bit of a lucky dip. So I'm not sure what's coming up. Let's have a look together. Okay, Lilac Wars, which is what do they call it? Star Fox 64 in the Americas. We got the change of Lilac Wars, I think purely because the UK did. So even though this is an Australian cartridge, we just kind of got whatever the UK got in most instances. So yeah, ours was called Lilac Wars as well. This isn't one that I put a lot of time in. I do like the look of it. I always like the look of it, but it is not one that I had played very much. Okay, Mischief Makers. This is one that I actively sought out when I was first collecting for the Nintendo 64, because at that time, as I said, around 10, 11 years ago, people on YouTube were talking about this one as being one of those, what do they call them? Oh, how could I forget? Hidden gems. That's what. Can't believe I forgot that. Hidden gems. That's what that's what they were touting. They were touting this one as a hidden gem on the system, and I knew about it. I had seen it. I wanted to get it, but I've been trying to get all these for cheap. So I think that was like a $10 game. I think it's gone up a lot since then. It is one that I wanted to put more time into. Only played the first little bit, but it's supposed to be a great platformer. So a unique platformer on the system. I think that's a treasure game. Those people who made other treasure games. Can't remember. Hexen. So there was Hexen and Heretic, and I can't remember which one came where, but oh man, having these games that were PC first-person shooters, or in this case, this one had a bit of magic and things going on. Having these games that were PC put onto console is something that I just thought was the bee's knees. Classic Doom, and you ended up with all these Doom clones, and it's a bit unfair to call them all clones because there are so many different types of. I guess they are just inspired, and this was once an actual id Software one. But it's software release. But yeah, to have games like this coming out on console is very cool. Unfortunately, the controller was rubbish for it. The original Nintendo 64 controller, not having the 2 analog sticks, because they didn't know that was the way that things should be done. So unfortunate that the console didn't have that, and really even with the Brawler, the Retro Fighters Brawler, unfortunately it doesn't have it either. So a lot of games still don't have a great setup when it comes to that first person mode of movement. Cool game, Cool concept. Pretty tricky, like pretty hard type of first-person game. Super Mario 64, not much to say about this, so you know what it is. A lot like Banjo Kazooie, you would just hear people talking about this all day long when the Nintendo 64 came out. I didn't put a lot of time into it. I have tried it, as in I've tried to play it on my 3DS when I had that. So the remake, I didn't mind it, but its glory days have come and gone with Super Mario 64. If you don't have nostalgia for it, it's probably a hard one to go back to. Personal opinions don't have to go along with my opinion, of course. Try it yourself. NBA Hang Time. I think this one is the best NBA Jam title. Because they changed the name to Hang Time, I can't remember what happened. Maybe something with the copyrights or whatnot. But because it went to Hang Time, it was a bit of a hidden one. And it still surprises me that lots of people don't know that NBA Hang Time is in the NBA. Like, it just went straight after NBA Jam, Jam Tournament Edition, straight into NBA Hang Time. Which is a shame. Because, as I said, this one is probably my favourite. If you do play this one on the Nintendo 64, make sure you go straight into the menu and make sure you change that controller setup so that you've got your boost up the top there, and then you've got your playing buttons down there, because I think they've got it set up in a different way where you've got a bit of a mess of buttons. So make sure you change it if you're going to play it. Great game for multiplayer fun. My brother-in-law played, and I played this for a fair bit at one stage, like as in one night. Had a heap of fun with it. He doesn't play video games, and we really enjoyed a bit of time on that one. So it's, one that anyone can join into, even those who don't really enjoy games or don't have a lot of time have played games before. Perfect Dark. Of course, this is where Rare went to after GoldenEye 007. Perfect Dark. Yeah, I hear this is the better of the two, and probably the one that to go back to if you had not played any before. I've only played a little bit of it, but I really enjoyed what I did play. I tried Perfect Dark Zero on the Xbox 360 after this, and it was a real clunky mess, I thought. I know that other people have different opinions about that, but it felt like it was a real in-betweener. Like it should have been out on the Xbox instead of the Xbox 360. But this one was pushing the limits of the Nintendo 64, and Perfect Dark Zero was the other way. It was really dragging behind. So, yeah, interesting game. Worms Armageddon. Now, here is something that doesn't get a lot of love these days, which is the simple 2D versions of Worms, where you have a couple of people in the same room and you're taking it in turn to try and blow each other up. If you're looking for a good multiplayer experience that is not something that you need twitchy fingers for, then this is a great multiplayer game. Taking in turns to try and out-strategize each other is great fun. Body Harvest, and here is my Video Easy. Newcomb was a fair way away from where I lived, but did I ever borrow things from there? Yeah, I think I did borrow a couple of videos from... Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did actually frequent this one after I moved house in my later years, but not at the Nintendo 64 time. It is still cool to have that Video Easy sticker on there. I love that. Yeah, Gremlin Interactive. I think that's like BMG or something. And then, these guys who did this then later became Rockstar to do Grand Theft Auto. I think most people know that by now. I don't think I'm telling you anything new. But, yeah, supposedly a really good game. Haven't played much of it. Supposedly still has its issues. This is one of my favourite games on the Nintendo 64. Star Wars Shadows of the Empire was a game that really was one of the main reasons I started collecting for the Nintendo 64. I wanted this. I wanted to play it. I had fond memories of it. And I was not disappointed when I picked up the Nintendo 64 again. As I said, around about 10 or 11 years ago, I had another go at this and played it all the way through. Finished the game, loved it. There are a couple of sections where you can get really stuck, and you might need to figure things out or look through a bit of a guide, because there are a couple of maze sections in the game, unfortunately. But apart from that, this is a perfect game in my opinion. Especially those first couple of levels where you're in, is it Hoth? You're in the ice and you're fighting the big walkers. AT-ATs are they called? I don't know. I'm hopeless at talking about Star Wars stuff. I don't know the names of them, but in the ice world, the snow world, and you're getting around in your little spaceship and trying to trip over those big walkers. So good. And then the story, don't remember the details of the story so much, but I do remember the gameplay, and the gameplay was excellent. Most of the time it's a 3D third-person perspective, trying to blast away a bunch of different bad guys while trying to get from here to there and doing a bit of platforming as well. It is so good. Yep, still so good. Doom 64. Yeah, a lot of fun this one. I haven't played all the way through, but I have played a fair chunk of this one. It looks really good on the big screen these days. You can see they're still doing a little bit of trickery in terms of its 3D-ness. So the sprites and things, or the enemies in this, still look a little bit paper cutout-ish, but it is a good deal of fun. Really cool idea to put this one out there and make it an exclusive. And thankfully we have better ways to play it now, because the colors all up to no good. It is way too dark, unfortunately. So you really need to adjust that color on your TV to even see what you're doing, unfortunately. Right, next one here, Star Wars Rogue Squadron. Played a little bit of this one as well. It's like the best of Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. It's like taking parts of those out, as in the flying parts, and making a whole game of it, which was well and truly justified, because the flying sections of Shadows of the Empire are terrific, and this is terrific as well. So it is well worth your time picking up these Rogue Squadron games. I wish I had number 2. I do not. But Rogue Squadron number 1 is fantastic. Very much a great Star Wars game. Great Star Wars experience. Lots of fun. And yeah, it was a bit of a marvel, as I said, back in the day with the early 3Ds. I have Turok 1, so that's coming up. But here's Turok 2 Seeds of Evil. I played number 1, and I really enjoy everything, kind of the way that it looks. I really enjoy the atmosphere. I enjoy the combat in it. What I do not like about the original Turok is that it is almost like you have to go through these levels and complete these little quests, and if you don't do it, then it really penalizes you. It's not like you go through one level after the next in one sequential order. It's you do the level, and if you don't do it right, then you're thrown back in and you have to do it again, and it's a maze. It's a maze of levels instead of being one linear path. I don't like that. So I don't know if Turok 2 does that as well. But if it does, then I probably won't enjoy that one either. Everything else about Turok is cool, except for that maze that they've got going on. I really don't like that. New Tetris, awesome Tetris game. Awesome Tetris game if you've got other people playing as well. Had a good few 4-player battles with this one, and this one really allows that to happen all on the same screen, where you're throwing over your bricks once you have gone through and you've eliminated your lines. A lot of special power-ups and things that can be used as well in this one. This is a great game on the Nintendo 64, but it's also just a great Tetris game. I know the one on the Wii is really good as well, because I've played a whole bunch of that one. I'll have to talk about that when I get to my Wii collection, but there is another one. I think it's a Mickey Mouse one or a Disney one that's supposed to be really good on the Nintendo 64. It's gotten too expensive for me to even care about. It doesn't have to get very expensive for that to happen. But yeah, the new Tetris was one that I picked up for cheap, but it's even worth it for a fair bit of money. It's a really good, fun 64 Tetris game. Quake number 1. It gets really hard quite quickly. It does have, I think this one's got a password save, which is excellent. That's the type of stuff that we want. It also allows you to put in codes if you want to do that, which is really cool. So any type of one that's really hard like this that you can put in some codes into to make things a little easier rather than really grind the way that they had set up for you to do that originally, just because they wanted to give you enough value for your money. I really like just being able to play the way that you want to play with these. Quake 1 is very different than Doom and Quake 2. Quake 1 is its own type of medieval type of battle game where you have weapons going on, but it is very gothic medieval, which they didn't take over to Quake 2 because it wasn't supposed to be a sequel. But anyway, yeah, I've spoken about Turok already. As I said, love everything about this except for the mazes that it makes you take. So keep that in mind if you get a copy of, or you're looking for a copy of Turok. It's going to make you do mazes. Here is the grey card version of The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. Haven't put any time into Ocarina of Time. Actually, that's a lie. I've been through the tutorial and I didn't get to where the world opens up. I always mean to get back to it. Yeah, just never have. So it's waiting for me someday. Quake 2. Yeah, as I said, this was not supposed to be a sequel to Quake 1. I liked Quake 2 much more than Quake 1, and still do. Quake 2 with its space aesthetic, as opposed to Quake 1 with its medieval gothic aesthetic. I really like Quake 2 better. I was right into that as a kid, as in, you know, more of the Doom type of stuff, where you're the guy who's up against this unstoppable force. Especially ones that are kind of taking your team and turning them into things that go against you. I was really into that. I really like Quake 2. It's an excellent game. It's a shame that they went with some of the Quake releases being multiplayer only. I really think they should have kept it as just original story modes and then have the multiplayer off to the side if they wanted to do that. Robotron 64, excellent puzzle game. Very much, if you like Smash TV, if you like that type of arena shooter, stuff like now Vampire Survivors and stuff like that, then Robotron 64 is going to be up your alley. Except it has strange little robot enemies instead, and a lot of colours going on in mainly black backgrounds. Oh, Mr. Magic! So that is an ex-rental from Mr. Magic down in Geelong that used to do this type of thing. But yeah, I never hired from there. I just used to dream about hiring from there because they were known for their games. And Robotron 64 is a great game. So well worth trying. I imagine people who got this when the 64 came out would have been disappointed because it didn't have the kind of graphics that all these other 64 games had. It was very basic in its graphics, but the gameplay is where it's at with this one. So it looks pretty bland when you compare it to other 64 titles, but the gameplay is where it's at. Right, getting down to our last two. This is Mystical Ninja, starring Goemon. This is the Mystical Ninja 2, and I got this cheaper because of its faded label. Haven't played it. I like the Mystical Ninja type of thing that's going on there. I have played the Super Nintendo one for a bit. I really think I would enjoy this one. I think this is more of a platformer, like a simplified 2D with a bit of 3D platformer than the one before it. So I think this one would be more up my alley, but I haven't given it much of a go. And I kept the first one. I always thought I don't want to pay more than 30 Australian dollars for the first one. And actually, I didn't even want to pay that. I wanted to pay about 15. But I've never found it for that cheap. And now they've gone silly prices. So there we go. That's what happens in the world of collecting, unfortunately. Here is one Video Easy X rental. Here is one, believe it or not, that I bought off eBay. I love the look of this. I thought it looked so cool. I'm like, yes, I want this, you know, beat up X rental. I love X rentals, and I was happy paying a much lower price to get an X rental copy where people have been like, all over it and have used it so much. Fighting Force 64 was something that I think I had a demo of on the PC. I just remember playing that first level over and over. So I think I had a demo of it on the PC. Really enjoyed Fighting Force 64. Originally, this was going to be a Streets of Rage sequel. I don't like Streets of Rage very much, but I really like this 3D version of it. And it didn't become that. It became not Streets of Rage, but Fighting Force 64, where you run around, and it's very Die Hard like. So if you think of the Die Hard arcade, more so, it's almost like a sequel to that, I would say. So these, I think they're police officers. I can't even remember the story, but just the gameplay where you're rushing towards a building, then you're working your way through the building, fighting people with all manner of things that you find along the way. And, you got bazookas at one point blowing up cars and things like that. It doesn't have enough of that kind of variety, but what it does have, it does fairly well. It's not great in its gameplay or its enemy variety or anything like that, or its variety in any sense, but it is a solid little beat 'em up if you're looking for something to play for chuck in for a half an hour or a little bit over. You can be through your lives in that point in time, or get a fair way and have had a great deal of fun out of it. Would have been a disappointing one to buy back in the day, but now that, it doesn't have to last you 12 hours every time. It can just be a half an hour game of fun. That's what that is. All right, thank you for joining me for my Nintendo 64 kind of romp through the games that I have. I appreciate your time. Your time means a lot. So for you to spend your free time watching this is an honor. Thank you very much for checking this out. If you do like this, then I have other ones of these on my channel to do with the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, the Game Boy, GameCube, and there will be more on the way because I like sharing this and showing you what type of things I have and the stories behind it as well. I hope you enjoyed this little ride, and I will see you next time.